Hey everyone, it's Owen here from OTech, and today I'll be doing a review of a less than typical case, which you might hate or you might love, because this is a mining case from Nanoxia, which is kind of a relatively unknown brand compared to other bigger case makers, but they're actually a pretty good company and they've been around for quite a while. It's just that they may not have quite as large of a social media presence as other companies, but they're getting there. And this time they sent me this case for review, which is their Rexgear Hydra I mining case. And this is basically a graphics card mining case that supports 8 graphics card and 2 power supply units if you want to use both of them. And so I think that once I received it, I actually was quite surprised of the box size because it is super huge, but it's actually quite a lightweight case. And that's a great thing, I think, because that means that you can easily move your rig quite easily even when it's fully populated, because the case itself isn't very heavy. That's one of the plus points that I realized as I took it out of the case, because it's actually lighter than I expected. Now I think that the best way to review cases is to actually try to do a build in it and then tell you guys what is my experience with it. So that's what I'm doing right now. I just installed 6 graphics cards, which are RX 570s from MSI, Asus, XFX and Sapphire into it, and also a mining motherboard from Gigabyte. So let's go through my experience of building in this case. So what I liked was that it was actually pretty good in cable management wise, especially for a mining case where most mining cases are super open air and you can see all the cable mess going everywhere. In this case I could actually make it kind of neat compared to my other mining builds. So I routed the PCIe 1X riser cables through the grommets under the motherboard tray. So that goes to the GPU chamber and onto the GPU risers, and that makes it really neat and also pretty easy to do. And also another good thing about it is that it's very easy to install the graphics cards. You just kind of slot it in like a normal PC case and then just screw it in like normal. Unlike cheaper mining cases, which are basically just L brackets screwed together, this one is actually built quite well and onto the specifications like most PC cases, which you can see as Nanoxia is experienced in making PC cases as well, so it's quite easy to install the graphics card. It's not a big hassle. And also I like the fact that they provided 3 120mm fan mounts on the bottom in front of the graphics cards. It does help airflow and also help cooling, because either way, if you're using it exhaust or intake, it does help move air around the graphics card. In my case, I used them as exhaust because I think that most open air cards blow more of their heat towards the front. So I think it was a pretty good idea to use it as exhaust like I always do in front of the cards, and that's what I did. And it's a good thing that they also included some wire fan grills, and black ones at that, so that the cables don't hit the fan when they're spinning. And because of that, I was able to route the PCIe cables in front of the cards too and keep the graphics card area quite clean, at least in my opinion, compared to other mining builds that I did. Basically, cable management and airflow is pretty good in this case. And also, one thing that I really appreciate is that the motherboard is also on the other side of the GPU chamber. Most of the mining cases that I've seen before basically have the motherboard sitting under the graphics card, which is not ideal because that really limits your your spacing between the motherboard and also the graphics card, and that means that it's kind of difficult to take out the motherboard if you need to replace it, or you need to replace your CPU or RAM, for example. Although I don't understand what's the point of all the wire grommets beside the motherboard, because you don't need that many cables in a mining build. You just need the power supply cables, which just stays in the GPU chamber anyways, and also the PCIe 1X cable to the graphics card, not much else. Let's move on to the things that I would have liked to be improved. So one of the things is that I hope that they would be more space efficient, because as you can see in this case, the graphics card are actually spaced quite close together for a mining case, which I think is not very great, because even though you have a little bit more space than a normal ATX case, which places each graphics card basically side by side, this still only has a very small gap between the cards, which is really not enough. They should have made it more spacious by maybe extending the case into a wider footprint so that you can accommodate more spacing between the cards, because if you're using a graphics card, you really don't have enough airflow in this case, in my opinion. Or they should maybe make the power supply chambers a little bit smaller and slimmer so that they can expand the graphics card area so that the spacing could be a little bit more. And also that in terms of spacing and airflow over the cards, I think that they should have also cut out the metal bits between the I/O panel, because I think those metal bits also kind of cut off some of the airflow that would have gotten into the card if they weren't there. And it would have also been nice to have some kind of fan mounting options to place in front of the GPU I/O ports, because that could be a great option to put like an intake or an exhaust fan to blow into or out of the graphics card area, as they would also help a lot in my experience with that. And in terms of airflow, I think that they should have also not vent the bottom basement to the side with the main side vents as well, because in my case, when I'm using it as exhaust, the fans blow the hot air out to the sides as well. So that's not a great thing, because the heat kind of just gets sucked back into the side vents and onto the graphics card if the bottom vent is open. So that's why I've been using this like blue tape to cover up the bottom portion of the vents that go to the basement. And one more thing is that they should have also installed a reset button into the case, because right now it only has a power button, which is, quite adequate, I guess, but I think a reset button would have been pretty nice to just quickly reset the motherboard if something goes wrong, instead of having to hold the power button or like flick the power supply switch. But anyways, this is still better than mining cases that are just frames, because those don't have any switches and you have to kind of poke on the motherboard power pins. So this is still an improvement that they have a power button, but still a reset button would have been nice. Also, I think that for the price of this case, which is $270, I think that it's a little bit too much. It's still just a little bit too expensive for a mining case, because even typical cases, like premium cases, don't cost that much. So I don't understand why are they pricing this as much, because it's really gone the other way. I think that if you're trying to sell a mining case, it should really be cheaper, because mining people like to cut costs as much as possible. Because at $270 you could just buy another graphics card, and I think that's what most miners will go to instead of buying an expensive case. So I think that Nanoxia could really just lower the price a little bit, because even at $270, I think that even though as great as and robust this case is, it's just a little bit too expensive. Especially when you consider also that I think the finish of the case is not very well done anyways, because the edges are a bit rough, and I felt that I almost cut myself on some of the edges. So I think that the finish of the case should be much better if they're charging $270 for this case, because for a mining case that's just absurd for me. It's a little bit too expensive. I would never buy it myself at $270 for my mining rig. But yeah, otherwise this is quite a well built case though. It's actually quite rigid. It's just the finishing is not very good. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, please leave a like and please click subscribe to see more of my future videos. Like, I will be doing a full featured mining build, ultimate mining build on this case. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.